Hi, my name is Aaron, and I'm going to be going through every single Beatles album and ranking them from worst to best. And obviously, the Beatles are a band that obviously the Beatles is a band that needs no introduction whatsoever. Obviously, they're one of the most influential rock bands of all time, from their music to their hairstyles. And they're such a unique band in that their range of sounds is so massive. And of course, some of these styles were kind of unheard of until the Beatles put them in the forefront and made them more mainstream. Now, the point of this video isn't really to talk about any fun facts about the Beatles or to go into the history of the Beatles and their songs. I guess I consider myself more of a casual Beatles fan where I just really like their music a lot. And actually, even though I listened to most of their songs, I never went through their entire albums from start to end. So I finally did that, and I just wanted to talk about what my favorites were. Maybe you will discuss what your favorites are also. If you'd like to leave a comment with your least favorite or your own list, that'd be great, and I'd like to discuss them with you because I think discussion is fun. My number 13 pick is the black sheep of all Beatles albums, which is Yellow Submarine. And that's not even to say that it's a bad album at all. Even my least favorite Beatles album is still really, really good. It's just that half of the album is the orchestral pieces that were written by George Martin, which are fantastic, and I love them, and I love listening to them. It's just that when you're thinking of it as a Beatles album, there's there's like 2 or 3 new songs on there, and the rest were featured in other albums, and freaking 3 that are on there are actually amazing still, though. It's Only a Northern Song is actually probably severely underrated in my opinion. I like the weird sounds that it has, and I also like the self-awareness in the lyrics. And also there's Hey Bulldog, which is probably one of my top 10 Beatles songs ever. But still, thinking of it as a Beatles album, it is probably the weakest because it has the least amount of new material. But I do think it's a really great album anyway, and you should listen to it because it's great. And you should also watch the Yellow Submarine movie. I have fond memories of seeing that and watching the All You Need Is Love scene at night and almost crying because I was so touched by it. I just came out as a big, dumb, stupid, sensitive crybaby. Anyway, my number 12 pick is actually with the Beatles, which is the second studio album released in 1963, which is the same year as their very first album, actually. And though this is full of very catchy, danceable music, it just kind of feels more or less like a lot of other rock music at the time, at least in my opinion. Some of the songs feel kind of repetitive and similar to each other, and I can't really think of many standout songs, except for maybe All My Lovin', but I really only know that song because it played pretty prominently in A Hard Day's Night, which is a movie I'm very nostalgic for, and also a cover of the song Money, That's All I Want, which I also think is a very catchy cover. But otherwise, it kind of sounds more of the same, and it's kind of weird coming from a band that is so synonymous with being innovative. And I realize that this sounds very dismissive of me to say this. I still really like the album. It's just not my favorite. At number 11, I'm putting Beatles For Sale, which, again, is a really, really good album. Feels like some of these songs are a lot slower than the previous Beatles albums that came before it, which were very energetic songs that could be easily danced to. And there are certainly some great songs on here, like the opener No Reply, which I think is very unique, and also 8 Days a Week, which is, of course, a classic. And then there's I'll Follow the Sun, which is such an amazing song, but it's so short, and every time I listen to it, I'm disappointed that it ended so soon. And yeah, overall, it's a great album. It's just, I don't have a whole lot to say about it. It's really good, and you should listen to it, because it's good. At number 10, I have Please Please Me, which is the very first album released in 1963. I guess it's kind of easy to see at this point that I'm not as big of a fan of the earlier stuff than I am the newer, more experimental stuff. But there are so many great songs in this album. I Saw Her Standing There, Love Me Do, Do You Want to Know a Secret, Twist and Shout. They're all incredibly catchy rock songs. They're very accessible, and I would even say maybe a bit repetitive in some parts. But they display so much creativity just with their very first album, and it's no surprise how they became so popular right out of the gate. At number 9, I have A Hard Day's Night, which I actually own on vinyl. I own 2 copies of this because one of them was 25 cents at a book sale. But anyway, A Hard Day's Night is a album that corresponds with the film that came out the same year. And of course, if you're a Beatles fan, I highly recommend that you go see it if you haven't already. This album is completely loaded with very energetic and fast-paced songs, a lot of which match the energy and the comedy of the film, which has a lot of scenes of the Beatles running around and improvising and doing whatever they feel like. And there's even scenes of them running for their lives from diehard fans. And this album definitely has the benefit of being associated with the movie that I really like. Because whenever I'm listening to the songs, I'm not just thinking about the songs, I'm thinking about the scenes that correspond with them. And that's very true with my favorite song and favorite scene from the movie, which is Can't Buy Me Love. And there's a lot of essential Beatles songs on here as well. And I'm sure that you probably listened to it if you're a Beatles fan. So let's move on. Shoot. Anyway, at number 8, I have the last Beatles album on here, which is Let It Be, which came out in 1970, which was shortly followed by them breaking up as a band, which is, of course, very sad. And a lot of these songs are a lot more somber and sadder than a lot of previous Beatles albums. There are a couple fast-paced songs, like I've Got a Feeling, and there's even one after 909, which I feel kind of sounds like a song that they might have released, in the early 60s. However, again, a majority of them are very somber songs. There's Two of Us and I Me Mine, which are very nice acoustic pieces. And of course, Let It Be, Across the Universe, and The Long and Winding Road, which I can't speak. Long Winding Road. And of course, there are songs like Let It Be, Across the Universe, and The Long and Winding Road, which I think are very beautiful, emotional songs. At number 7, I have Revolver, which is right here. I like this album a lot. Again, it's a great album, but it's not my most favorite. I do know that a lot of people put Revolver as their very favorite. But personally, I think there's others that are better. But that's no diss to Revolver. Revolver's great. It's great. It's not gonna stay. I often see Revolver at the top of lists, and it's easy to see why, because at this point, the Beatles were really, really experimenting. The classic and relatively simple rock song like Taxman is immediately followed by Eleanor Rigby, which is very much orchestra and string heavy. And it's such a drastic tonal shift from anything that the Beatles had really done at that point, unless I am mistaken. And of course, there are some very upbeat songs in here, like Yellow Submarine, Good Day Sunshine, and Gotta Get You Into My Life. However, this album is primarily recognized for having a lot of drastically different sounds than anything you had heard on another Beatles album before, some of which I would say are psychedelic, for lack of a better word. They were really experimenting and trying out very different things with this album. The previous album, Rubber Soul, feels like they were kind of dipping their toe in the water, whereas with Revolver, they just full-on dived in to experimenting and just trying different things, especially Indian influence with songs like Tomorrow Never... Shoot, what is it? Embarrassing. Tomorrow Never Knows. I was going to say Tomorrow Never Dies. That's a James Bond movie. And all this experimenting really paid off, and this album's really awesome. At number 6, I have Help, which is an album that corresponds with the 1965 movie, which was directed by Richard Lester, who directed the A Hard Day's Night movie. And that movie is a ton of fun to watch as well, so I also recommend that one too. And the reason why this one is so high on the list is because at this point it feels like the Beatles were just streamlining these amazing songs, and it all feels so effortless and with such high, consistent quality. Almost every song on here is a classic, and I'm so amazed that the Beatles were able to make so many amazing songs in one album that are so catchy that they never leave your head once they're in there. There's Help, The Night Before, You Gotta Hide Your Love Away, I Need You, Another Girl, You're Gonna Lose That Girl. There's so many others that I'm not even mentioning. Like, are you freaking kidding me? And though this song doesn't appear in the movie, there's also Yesterday, which is so good. I seriously cannot stress enough how great Yesterday is. It's so freaking good. At number 5, we have Rubber Soul, which is probably the Beatles album I've listened to the most times. And very similar to Help, it's just filled to the brim with so many memorable songs. And this album's very special too, because it's one of the first times that they really start to experiment and try different sounds. Primarily Norwegian Wood, which is the first use of the sitar, if I'm not mistaken. And there's also songs like I'm Looking Through You, which is intentionally messy in a way, with a melody that is both soothing and unconventional at the same time. And there's also the guitar during the chorus that sounds like it's trying to stab you. On top of that, there are a lot of classics as well. There's the lighthearted and pretty funny Drive My Car. There's the iconic Nowhere Man. There's also George Harrison's Think for Yourself, which I think is a great, great song. There's also the shockingly blunt and kind of harsh Run for Your Life. In previous Beatles albums, there's songs like Oh, I'll Cry Instead, where it's like, oh, maybe she's seeing another dude, oh, that's so sad. Or songs like You Can't Do That, where it's like, oh, you can't do that. Seeing other guys is not good. And then there's songs like Run for Your Life, where it's like, I am going to kill you. But there's also some really touching and, again, unconventional love songs in here, like The Word, Girl, Michelle, Wait, If I Needed Someone. And then there's also my favorite song on the entire album, which is, again, probably one of my top 5 Beatles songs in my life. So again, Rubber Soul, great album, one that I've listened to so many times and will probably listen to many, many more times in the future. At number 4, I have Magical Mystery Tour, which pairs with another movie, Magical Mystery Tour, which ain't all that good. But again, it's the music that really keeps it above water. Some of my favorite Beatles songs are on here, like Strawberry Fields Forever, which is very trippy, uses different takes and different speeds. Parts of it are very relaxing and delightful to listen to, while others are very intense and overwhelming. I also like some of the more delightful songs like Penny Lane, which is very nostalgic, and it paints this very nice mental image in your head of what this town was like. And there's also Your Mother Should Know, which is a very, very good song as well. There's I Am the Walrus, which is total nonsense, and it's great. And then there's Baby You're a Rich Man, which also has a very strong Indian influence and has a great build-up to a very loud and exciting chorus. And now we're getting to my top 3, and actually all of these are interchangeable. Pretty much if you were to ask me tomorrow, I might tell you a different order for these 3, because they're all really close to being my very favorite. But at this very moment, my number 3 is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which is often considered the very best. I think it's very cool that this is a concept album when that wasn't really a very common thing. There's the title track, of course, which is immediately followed by A Little Help from My Friends, which is probably one of the best Ringo songs. There's the psychedelic Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, which is a very trippy song with some very bizarre lyrics. There's some very fun songs to listen to on here as well, like why can't I remember? It's right in front of me. There's some very fun songs to listen. Let me drink some water. There's some very fun songs on here also, like Getting Better and When I'm 64. There's also the very sad She's Leaving Home, which is a song that paints a mental image in your head of this very tragic event. But I don't think any of them are as dark as, say, A Day in the Life, which is an amazing song. I often get into debates with myself if this is my favorite Beatles song because it's so freaking good. It has so much going on in it, so many different varieties of sounds in one song. It's very dark and dreary and overwhelming, but there are other parts in it that are very exciting and beautiful. It's just like my brain just like blows up and just is taken away every time I listen to this song. So yeah, yeah. At number 2, we have The Beatles, also known as the White Album. And with this being a double album, obviously it's a very long album. However, there's so many high points in this album, and some of those high points are like the highest highs. Back in the USSR, Dear Prudence, Glass Onion, Obla-Di Obla-Da, Bungalow Bill, and the very simple and iconic Blackbird, I Will, Revolution. And all of these songs sound totally different from one another, just further demonstrating the Beatles' versatility and creativity. There's also Martha, My Dear, which has a lot of very surprising sounds in it. There's also the powerful and brilliantly written While My Guitar Gently Sweeps. Whoops. The White Album just has so much variety and so much creativity, and even though I don't love every single song, the quality throughout is very consistent and very, very high. Oh, and then also Revolution number 9, which is a very interesting song. I think that's probably the best word for it. I do know people who downright hate it, but I think it's interesting. I kind of enjoy listening to it in a way, because every time I re-listen to it, I just kind of hear something new that I hadn't heard before. And obviously it doesn't sound like anything else I've ever listened to. And if the point of that song was to make you feel unnerved and disturbed a bit, it succeeds tremendously. Anyway, at my number 1, which all of you could probably guess at this point if you're familiar with the Beatles, is Abbey Road, which is right here. Wow, crazy, right? And it's probably my number 1 because it has the most of my favorite songs on here. It starts off with Come Together, which is a very simple but effective instrumental. There's the song Something, which is one of the greatest love songs of all time, written by George Harrison. It's really good. There's the instrumentals to Maxwell's Silver Hammer, which are very fun and lighthearted, even though the lyrics are incredibly disturbing and just about a man who's going around and murdering people with a hammer. There's Octopus's Garden, which is a very fun and bouncy. There's Oh Darling, which definitely has a more blues and slow rock oriented sound to it. And then there's I Want You, She's So Heavy, which is this nuts, crazy, kind of frustrating and repetitive song, but at the same time it's so intense and fun to listen to. It's like kind of groovy, but also kind of overwhelming and intense. And then it just kind of ends. It doesn't like have a drown out or like anything like that. It just stops. And then that's followed by Here Comes the Sun, which is this very delightful and uplifting song. And it's just crazy that it follows I Want You, She's So Heavy. This leads into the famous Abbey Road medley, which is a 16-minute song, essentially, that's made up of a bunch of unfinished songs that the Beatles never finished. And they just kind of decided to throw them all together and make them just fade into each other. I do think each of these songs are really great, and I would have loved to see them expanded a bit more. And obviously that's not going to happen, but I am glad that they ended up being released and put into this album. And my favorite of all of these is the combination of Golden Slumbers, Carry That Weight, and The End. I just love the really sad sound of Golden Slumbers that goes into the very grand orchestra, and I love that it incorporates sounds from You Never Give Me Your Money, which brings the whole medley full circle. And I think it's hilarious that they included Her Majesty. Like, you think the album's over, and then you just get this little 15-second ditty at the end after you think it's all over. And I heard that somebody just kind of like snuck that in at the very end, and the Beatles were all very surprised to hear it on there. And I think that is hilarious, just picturing their reactions. Overall, Abbey Road is awesome, and I love all the songs on here. I think it's great. I think it's very interesting and fun to listen to, and I've listened to it quite a few times, actually. And at least in this point in time, again, my top 3 could change, even tomorrow. You could ask me and I might give you a different list. But at least in this point in time, Abbey Road is my favorite. Well, anyway, thank you for sticking around for this video, which is probably very long. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for existing. You're all important, and you are all loved, and I love you. And if you'd like to discuss what maybe your favorite Beatles albums are, just leave them in the comments. I'll take a look at them. I will argue with you, unless you agree with me. But I will argue with you. So that'll be fun also. Thank you very much to my editor, Aaron, who edited this video. It is not me. There's somebody else who is also named Aaron, which is cool. He's a very talented guy, and you should check him out at his YouTube channel, which will be in the description. I shouldn't point because YouTube kind of changes where the description box is all the time. But it'll be somewhere. And thank you again for watching. Perhaps I will make more videos, and we'll see how that goes. Yeah. Goodbye. Wait.